Economist Arthur Laffer is the founder and chairman of Laffer Associates. He served as an advisor to President Ronald Reagan. Welcome, Arthur. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Paul.
So how good is this economy right now?
It looks pretty good. I mean, we have a long way to go before it's really certifiably great, but we've had a 4.2% GDP growth in the second quarter. The first estimate is for the third quarter is 3.5%, both of which are really very, very nice numbers. This jobs report's a great number. But again, after we've been going down for so long, for 16 years, we've got to do this for a long time before we really get up to the prosperity we need. But every trip takes a first step, and this is a really good first step, Paul, and I'm very happy.
Okay, so what do you attribute the change? As you look at the data, remember, last half of 2015 and all of 2016, we barely skirted a recession. And suddenly, 2017 faster, and now 2018 accelerated to an even higher plane. What's the reason?
Could it possibly be tax cuts, regulatory reform?
Could be.
Good monetary policy, a real attempt at trade. Now, the one thing it's not, Paul, is spending control.
Right.
This is way, way, way out of control, but I expect Trump to address that next year. But we have had great economic policies, and they're really working, just like we said they would, by the way, Paul. Remember that debate we had there in New York? And,
right.
We were completely right on the line, and the growth rates are there, and let's just hope they continue. We have a lot of room left to grow, by the way. The participation rate can go up at least another 2-3 points. Productivity can rise a lot and be there for a long time. It's been very low for a long time. And working hours, I mean, that can rise a lot. And what we saw in this jobs report as well was a decline in the part-time employment for economic reasons, which is, a bad sign. And with that falling, it's really great. It adds to average hours. So all of these things are happening in the way I had hoped they would, but I expect they will.
Where do you see anything to worry about here? You worried at all about the stock market?
Of course.
Volatility, and are you worried about the Fed raising interest rates?
I'm not worried about the Fed. I think the Fed's doing just the right thing. We need interest rates at the market clearing rate, not at a low rate. For the last 8-9 years, we've had the Yellen-Bernanke zero interest rates, and that meant no money flooded into the housing market. So we had the lowest new housing starts per 10,000 population. Probably the last 9 years were the lowest 9 years in history. So now we've got the rates coming up, which will attract capital to those markets. And frankly, I'm very excited about that. I think Powell's doing a great job.
Okay.
I am worried about trade. I am worried about spending, but I always worry about stuff, Paul.
No, you don't, Art. You're the most optimistic man in the world.
I am. But we've got the tax cuts behind us. They're the best bill ever. I mean, that tax bill had almost no mistakes in it at all. The deregulation is just fantastic. Monetary policy, and I think Trump and Larry Kudlow are doing a great job on getting some trade negotiations. If the president meets with Xi in Argentina, I can't help but think that this will be a huge plus for America and for China.
Well, okay. Now, how much of that is at risk if there's a change in the Congress? Obviously, President Trump has the veto pen, so he can veto anything they do.
Sure.
And there won't be big enough margins to overrule him on most of that. But on the other hand, if the Democrats can push him in a different direction, you worry a little bit about that.
Not really. I mean, Democrats aren't as bad as they're made out to be, and Republicans aren't as good as they're made out to be. Jack Kennedy was one of the greatest presidents ever with tax cuts growth. I voted for Bill Clinton twice. I thought he was a spectacular president. Obviously, I loved Reagan, and I like Trump. I think Trump's really spectacular. And if the Democrats take over the House, I don't see why they can't think correctly as well on economics. I mean, everyone knows that tax rate reduction in the right time and circumstances increases economic growth. It's just common sense. You can't tax an economy into prosperity, and they may well start to work with the Republicans and work with Trump.
Why aren't the Republicans then, as you look into these elections, you look at the polls, you look at the prospects that they might lose the House, why aren't they getting more credit for this economic turnaround?
I don't know that they aren't. I mean, we'll have to see what the elections are, but in 1980, even though we had the tax bill passed and all that, Reagan got hammered in the off election. It wasn't until 1984 that President Reagan really got it. We squeaked by in the presidency there. We only won 49 out of 50 states. It was a real closer. But I think that's going to happen. We have not had enough prosperity yet where people really feel expansive and all that. But it's coming, and it's coming very quickly. And by the time we get to 2019, 2020, and Trump will be getting a lot of credit for that.
Any elections in particular, either governorships or Senate or House, where you think the economy is really worth noting as a factor?
One is really big, and that's the governor's race in Connecticut.
Okay.
A guy named Bob Stefanowski is running against Ned Lamont. Stefanowski is a pro-growth, free market, democratic, economic supply-sider versus a stagnant governor who is doing the classic clash between pro-growth and anti-growth. And Bob Stefanowski, if he can pull it out in blue Connecticut, this will be a game changer. The other one I love is in Colorado. Jared Polis, who's a Democrat, is running on tax cuts or potentially on tax cuts. He was my intern for years in my office. I've been on all of his family boards. He's spectacular, a Democrat and a pro-growth Democrat. So, you know, we've got some real cutting-edge issues coming along that I think are terribly exciting.
I should add, Arthur, that you did advise Stefanowski in Connecticut on his tax
I sure
proposal.
did.
Okay.
But also Jared Polis. And, you know, I'm very much involved in a lot of governor's races in South Carolina, here in Tennessee. I've been involved in maybe 7 or 8.
All right, Arthur, thanks. We'll see what happens. Appreciate your being here.
We're ready and watching.
When we come back, the battle for control of Congress
Thanks, Paul.
coming down to the wire with